On today's episode, Fantasy Versus, we're going to be taking a look at the Super Bowl champions, those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their dynamic offense that's returning all 22 starters. Two of those starters will, of course, be Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Andrew Hagenbaugh. How do you got these guys stacking up in your rankings?
So I have Mike Evans ranked as number 14 in my rankings, and I have Antonio Brown as the number 22 guy. Now, I have Antonio Brown slightly above Chris Godwin just for the fact that AB is a great receiver. He still has a lot of it in his tank. We saw that last year. But I don't know. I think with Antonio Brown getting to play an actual full season for the first time in a few years, I think Chris Godwin's got to be the guy that gets out of the mix. And so it's just basically Mike Evans and Antonio Brown at this point. And Chris Godwin's just kind of the wide receiver 3. He's kind of there. Mike Evans, the number 1, Brown, the number 2. And although Brown only got to play about 9 games this past season, he looked pretty solid in those 9 games. I like Antonio Brown a lot, but obviously I think Mike Evans, obviously as the wide receiver 1, top 10 in the NFL, I still have to give that slight edge over to Mike Evans.
I think why I'm going to be leaning actually Antonio Brown a little bit more this season, though. I think average draft position kind of plays into this. The fact that Antonio Brown is going several rounds later than Mike Evans, I think is a big contributor to why I believe AB's going to have a bounce back season. AB was on a crash course for a Hall of Fame career prior to all his troubles a couple years ago. Literally, when we started this podcast, it was the Antonio Brown hour, as we had to talk about all his antics with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now AB's back and he's dazzling. At the end of last year, he really came on strong. I think he's got off to a little bit of a slow start, just getting used to the offense. But you look at what he was doing later in the year, I think that's a lot of cause for optimism. Now, it's very hard to separate these two out just because the target share is so even. To give you an example, there was 267 pass attempts by Tom Brady last year between weeks 9 and 17. AB had 22.8% of that target share. Mike Evans, 23.6. Literally, the margins are so thin. I think some benefits for Evans, obviously he's a big-bodied wide receiver. He can get that jump ball situation. He can go up for those contested catches. But AB, when you look at some AB highlights, it's like watching man play a video game. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that from AB this year. And I'm just a little bit more optimistic on him this time around.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people should have high optimism for Antonio Brown. I think a lot of people should draft Antonio Brown. Like you said, he could get to those numbers again like he did with the Pittsburgh Steelers and like he was supposed to with the Raiders, but all those antics and stuff like that kicked in and he didn't get to play. And I think it really messed up his career. And now I think he's with a good system. He's with a good team. He's got a very competent quarterback in Tom Brady, a solid head coach in Bruce Arians. And I don't know, he looked, like you said, he looked really good towards the end of the season and in the playoffs and such. It looked like an old Antonio Brown in those situations. Now, like you said, Mike Evans, the big-bodied receiver, goes up for jump balls. He's going to be more of a touchdown-dependent guy, a guy who can get you a lot of touchdowns, as he had 13 touchdowns last season. And I think he's primed for another double-digit season for touchdowns. And mind you, he also had, for at least a full season, he had 109 targets and over 1,000 yards, which, I mean, this is like a 6th consecutive year or 5th consecutive year of 1,000 yards or more. That's just typical Mike Evans. And again, another reason why I have him so high in my rankings. But again, you never know. Antonio Brown could have a season where he gets 1,000 yards this season. I wouldn't even put past that he could, especially with the even target shares.
Given they're so even, given that Tom Brady spreads the ball around, I love the fact that AB is getting drafted 4 rounds later, about round 7, round 8, depending on how big your league size is, whereas Mike Evans is going in the 3rd round. I think that incremental difference is huge going into fantasy drafts when developing a strategy of when you want to take these guys. And if AB could come back to that Pittsburgh Steelers Antonio Brown, we're talking about a guy who had 15 touchdowns the last time he played a full season in the NFL. 15 touchdowns. Now, he's obviously not going to get the same target share that he had whenever he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not going to just get fed the ball at insane levels the way that Ben Roethlisberger did. But I think there's a great rapport between him and Tom Brady. And the fact that he still has the ability to take the top off of defense, I think just is a huge separating factor for these two. And like you mentioned, it is so close between the margins on them. The matchups at the end of the year too are also very tantalizing. One tough game against Marshawn Lattimore, but then they come back, Carolina at the Jets, so the Jets can't escape Tom Brady. That is one thing. Death taxes Tom Brady for the New York Jets organization. One thing too that's something to talk about. Whenever you face this Tampa Bay offense, who are you putting your number 1 corner on? Is it going to be Mike Evans? Is it going to be Antonio Brown? Because a lot of times Marshawn Lattimore lined up against Mike Evans last year. And if that's the case, AB can eat.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think Marshawn Lattimore would go up against Mike Evans. I mean, you have to put number one versus number one. There's no other way around it. And like you said, if that happens, that just spells a great day for Antonio Brown because he can go through the middle. He can go through those crossing routes. And he's going to be one of those guys that's going to – Mike Evans is more of a big ball kind of guy as well. I mean, obviously you can catch short passes and make big gains out of it, but I think you're going to see a lot of Antonio Brown getting those like 10-yard receptions, the 15-yard receptions, and just kind of try and turn up field. So he's going to get a lot of those targets that are like within the 10-yard range, the first down range and stuff like that. And that could be huge, especially against a team like New Orleans where Marshawn Lattimore is mostly guarding Mike Evans.
Okay, so not enough to convert you. You still have Mike Evans as top 10, and I'm there with you. But I think AB can rise to that level of that top 2-round wide receiver that we saw a couple of years ago. And I think that might be the difference. But let us know, Slumpbusters. What do you think? Are you leaning towards Evans? Are you leaning towards AB? Are you leaning towards Chris Godwin? Hell, maybe you're a Scotty Miller truther. Let us know in the comments below. Leave a like on this video because, hey, it helps the algorithm. Get us 2,000 subscribers before this fantasy football season begins, and you guys won't regret it. Check out our partner, cavemancoffeecode.com. Cavemancoffeecode.com, promo code SLUMP. Don't be a chump, use promo code SLUMP. Juju Talk Sports, Drew Hagenbaugh. We'll see you next time.